Manual reviews bad, automation good.
Enablement versus coddling or hand-holding. If you run an enterprise platform, theoretically, every single one of those engineers might use your platform, and you can't touch every one of them. You can't hand-hold every one of them. Big companies like that have a lot of turnover. There's a lot of consultants and contractors that are coming in and out. So you need mechanisms, you need controls that are automated. What are the things that you need to make sure as a platform you're coming up on, readiness to adopt? Okay, great. What are the things that need to be done? Oh, we want everybody to have done this training, or we want everybody to have written this file or this documentation or whatever. Great. Let's programmatically assess that, and then off we go.
Well, that's why we built the journeys, right?
We're going to get into a fun conversation today. We've been talking to a bunch of our customers and multiple teams on these customers that are building platforms, coming from a platform engineering standpoint. We keep hearing a similar challenge, and we thought we'd try to help people navigate through it. And the challenge being, you want people to adopt your platform, you want them to do it right, you want the things to be good, but you don't really want to do it for them. That's not a platform, that's just a service.
That's an extension of the team.
How do you balance being an enablement function and not become a white glove or kind of just you're doing their work for them type of stuff, and figuring out that balance and helping people sort of have a rubric for how to think about that?
That's a hard problem to solve. And the answer to that could change depending on what you're working in, what you're doing, who do you have on your team, who's on their team, and what the business or tech priorities are. They change all the time. And so evaluating that regularly is going to help just make sure, A, you're doing the right things, but you're doing the right things for the right now goals and targets. There are times when you want to be more hands-on, but then there's other times where you need to be hands-off, or else you're going to be hands-on forever.
Well, it really depends on the circumstance, obviously, which is just true, right? When you're dealing with people and politics and budgets and all those different things, these things do matter. Ultimately, I think as a guiding principle, when you're building out teams and when we say platforms, what do we mean by platforms? Usually there's all kinds of different enterprise platforms. When people say platform engineering, they usually are referring to some sort of shared technology capability, right? So API gateways, API platforms is a really good example. DevSecOps platforms, CI/CD, all that type of stuff can be a great example. Cloud, or maybe Kubernetes platform or something like that, or infrastructure platform. Those types of sort of shared capabilities where you're giving someone something to build on.
You're providing a capability for multiple teams to build that they don't have to do themselves. It could be API platform was a gateway. A platform would be you've empowered teams to build in AWS and you're a cloud platform team. A lot of examples of this, but it's more the horizontal team that covers multiple spaces versus the verticals who are maybe building a feature. They're building a business capability. They're building something on top of a capability that you've provided.
Yeah. And it should be high leverage. So this is one of the points I would say that, again, every circumstance is different. So this isn't exactly going to fit 100% of the time, but I think generally this is good guidance, right? It should be a high leverage situation, right? It should be a capability that is somewhat universal, if not completely universal, to all your other application teams. It should be something where you do not need to staff your team in a linear way to the people you're supporting, right? So if you go from supporting 2 teams and you've got 2 people on your platform engineering team, and now you're supporting 50 teams, if you have to go to 50 people, something's wrong, right? Like it shouldn't be that way. You should get some leverage out of it. And in order to do that, really, one of the things you have to do is you have to think about it in very much a self-service way, right? So cloud and DevSecOps and those types of things are definitely the better teams think about things in a self-service way, right? Like you say, okay, here's the capability. Here's how you're supposed to use it. You want to spin up an app? Go spin up an app. Here's some guardrails. Here's some golden path, whatever tool, whatever thing you want to say. Here's an automated press a button and it does it for you. However that works. And then off you go. You don't want to get into a situation where you're bespoke solving everyone's problems. That's not the way it is. You have to have good requirements for getting started. Like this is one of the things we help our customers with, right? Is putting together a readiness checklist. What's your readiness to go on to the API platform? Have you done the things, the most basic things that you can do on your own to get ready? If not, go do that work before you come and consume our capacity and our attention, right?
And that's hard because, what I've seen when I've built these teams out is that everybody has questions of how to use something, or what is this pattern, or what is that pattern, or I need support with something that you built. And it's hard to get that right. And I think there's still it's not quite a parallel scaling up of a platform team, but there's still some semi-linear alignment with scaling to multiple teams, more and more teams, you having a little bit of a bigger footprint because you're likely providing bigger and more capabilities to those teams as the teams scale out. But you've done the same thing. Like I've had hiccups of having to support more, and then you finally just say, I'll do it because it's so much easier that way than having to have the support. And that's where I've seen it fall down. Is yes, you're right for right now. It might be easier, but you're optimizing for the right now versus the long-term health of the organization. That's where I see it typically broken down.
Yeah, I mean, in any case, when you're the leader of a platform engineering team and a platform, we did this at one of the banks, right? Like we both at different times owned this platform. There was the API platform, and then we were going from one product to another. The enterprise wanted people to adopt the platform for all the compliance and security best reasons.
And we're not going to get into that.
Yeah. And also you as the platform owner want adoption. Adoption is your product manager in a lot of ways, right? Like you want the metrics on the thing that you are building to go up and to the right. So you do want that. And so sometimes you might kind of help pull people into the process and be like, all right, you don't have your API spec. Okay, we'll just do it for you because we just got to get you going. And to your point, maybe sometimes that's the right decision, but you got to be really careful because if you get in the habit of you're just now an extension of the dev team doing their work for them, and also they're not learning, right? They're not understanding why that's important. They're not understanding, oh, I got to keep this contract. The spec is actually my contract with all of my consumers. They need to understand why that's important and then also maintain it themselves. If you do it for them, there's zero chance they're going to actually maintain it. You have to balance, to your point, the right now with the long-term health, because sometimes you just got to do stuff that doesn't scale, right? Like it is okay to do that, but you have to be very careful about it and you have to give yourself a rope out of it. You're going to go down in the well and dig around and find the thing, but you better have a way to climb out of that hole.
Somebody could think that, well, this is the new pattern. I'm just going to build this and let it sit and everybody's just going to come to me and adopt it. It never works that way.
No.
Ever. No. You might get some traction in it. You might get some people who are beat over the head by their boss to migrate to it, but they're not going to just come and ask nicely and just start to use your platform and you're never going to hear from them. You're always going to have to engage at some level.
There's an evangelism aspect to it.
Yes. That's actually where I found the biggest success is evangelizing the platform, leading with the capabilities, leading with, hey, we heard that you had a problem with this. We heard you. We fixed it. In the next version, we're going to have this. And the number of people who had reached out to me and says, when can I start? This is great.
Yeah.
You're going to use the open API spec instead of the platform-specific garbage to onboard my API. Please, I see the capabilities, but I never did it because of how hard it was to onboard. But if you're making it that easy to onboard, yes, please, can I have it now? So that works so much better than anybody else is going to lead with. Yeah, you can lead with compliance. You can lead with having their leaders yell at them. You can lead with trying to get into a planning meeting and getting it prioritized. It doesn't work because they're going to come begrudgingly. They're going to do it. They're going to complain. And then somebody will say, never mind, you don't have to do it anymore because clearly we don't have time for this. I'm going to keep doing the regular thing. Lead with the benefits, leading with the capabilities, leading with, hey, look how easy it is. Look at all the benefits and look how easy it is. It goes a lot longer than using a club.
We give horizontal functions a hard time a lot in this podcast and just kind of in general, as having run them. It's super easy for the horizontal functions, whether it's like an audit and compliance or security or infrastructure or whatever, to really think they're the center of the universe. And these platform teams are not immune from that dynamic either. To your point, everything you're just describing, it's salesmanship, it's evangelism, it's customer education. These people are your customers. This is actually one of the bigger things I used to hammer teams about, whether they were my teams or teams of which I was the customer. I hammer them like, hey, I'm your customer. You need to think about them as the customer. The customer is not you. The goal is not to grow your team as the platform engineering team. The goal is to shrink your team long-term. You are providing a capability. Your goal is not to be the center of the universe. You're enabling and empowering the people that are actually shipping business value. You're shipping indirect value at best, which is not a bad thing. I don't mean to cast aspersions on that, but there's enormous leverage there. So that's why it's really positive and powerful. But you have to do what you're saying, where it's like you still have to keep in mind the app team or the dev team or the sprint team or the pod, whatever you call them, right? The reason you exist is to make them more effective. But at the same time, like you're not capacity for them either. So you're not part of their team. Like if you think about it purely like on a financial basis, you're being paid out of overhead and then they're being paid in a very specific initiative would be a way to think about it, right? So you don't want to cross those streams. You don't want to do their work for them.
You're in the mix of their deliverables. Now they're dependent on you. You cast another dependency to get their work done. And now you've put yourself in the spotlight of why aren't you doing this? You
Yeah, you
slowed them
slowed
down.
them
Right.
down. You created to your point, you created a
Whether or
dependency.
not you did slow them down is different than the perception of you slowing them down, because no matter what you look at it, you slowed them down.
Inevitably, you can't not slow them down because if you create a situation where they have to come to you to do anything, they come and talk to you or whatever. You're adding friction to the system. They shouldn't have to talk to you about anything. Theoretically, I'll leave that big matzo ball of a theoretically out there. But like theoretically, if you're running a great platform, you should have great educational materials. You should have regular lunch and learn, workshoppy type things. You should have tons of
Office
videos,
hours.
office hours. You should have all this kind of fixed ways for them to become educated on the right way to use your tools and then consume them and then go off and do it on their own. If you've got a situation beyond like the initial maybe onboarding into a space, you might formalize that a little bit, right? I've seen this happen at one of the banks. We actually had a great platform engineering thing inside of their cloud team, and then some leadership changed and they went process heavy. So anytime you had a new application, you had to go through like these three committees of people that didn't know what they were talking about. They were going to ask you the same 30 stupid questions that weren't relevant. And but it was a direct exercise you had to go through. Like that was completely wrong. It was completely the wrong choice for a bunch of different reasons. If you're doing that type of thing, you've failed because now you're just adding friction for friction's sake and it doesn't provide value. But if you can create guardrails where they could do all these, and again, with the automation we have available to us today, forget agentic and all that stuff. It's just workflows and stuff that you can do. There's no need for that stuff. You can go and fill out a form and spit out the code you need or whatever the initial stuff is. So you don't want to put yourself in the critical path as a platform engineering team. It's going to be unavoidable at some spots, especially like in the early days, because the early days, there's going to be this weird do I or don't I adoption. Whoever your early players are, they're going to have an initiative where they're going to be building something. And they're like, okay, are you ready for us or not? Right. And you're going to have to sort of make that call and it's never going to be comfortable. And at some point, you're just going to have to be like, yes, we're going to go. We're committed. We're part of your critical path. But beyond that initial one, you don't want to be in critical path for anybody. And you got to work your roadmap and your plans and everything you do to make sure that doesn't happen. Right. Because all you're doing is slowing people down.
You're mentioning friction on things, and there's actually a place for there being a little bit of friction for the teams using your platform. The scenario was my team was having a lot of support requests. They're saying, hey, we're fielding so many support requests. We have one person dedicated to support all the time, and they're losing half their week in support requests. And I said, okay, we'll make it harder to submit support requests. Huh? Yeah, like this is a good friction because what I asked them to do is just put some automation in so that the person submitting the support has to check the box. I have read the docs. Here's the links. I have tried the solution myself. And the number of support requests dropped by 75% because that little bit of friction that we put in, giving them the docs, having them check that seems silly, but they've checked the box that they have read the docs, they have tried the solutions outlined, and this problem is not in the docs. Support request plummeted because it's just that little bit of friction that says, yeah, you know what, this is a little bit harder than I want to because I'd feel bad. I don't want to check saying that I've looked at everything and then they catch me in a lie. And that little bit of friction, the 2 checkboxes or 1, I don't remember what it was, but it gave that little bit of mental friction so that people didn't want to submit support for silly things. Not only did we drop in support requests and losing that time, but we've gained productivity on both sides of the equation because now with that waiting for the support request to finish, the other developer could read the docs, they get more educated, they get their work done faster, and my team was able to get more of their work done faster.
I wouldn't put that under friction. I would put that under hacks to make people educate themselves.
Well, it is a little bit of friction because it's made it harder to submit, but yes.
Yeah, but what you're ultimately trying to do, though, you're ultimately trying to make sure, because the easiest thing is just throw it over the wall. I don't know what this is. You guys help me. Like, okay.
What's this error message mean? It's right there.
Nonsense. We're not doing that, right? Like, so I agree with that. When I say friction, let me be clear. I mean, you don't want to create friction in their SDLC, in the delivery of their work, in the delivery of their initiative, of their feature. You do not want to create a situation where they're like, well, we have to go and work with these guys and get their approval and go through their toll gates and go through this all. That should not be a thing. Or if it is, it should be absolutely minimal. Maybe there's a good argument for it in some cases. With the cloud stuff, I could see an onboarding where you kind of say, okay, we have to educate you to a certain point before we can sort of let you go do your thing. If you're going through and you're digging through and like doing full approvals of all the architecture and all that type of stuff, I don't think that's necessarily appropriate. But again, it depends on the situation. Maybe it is. These guys used to call it a dojo. They would do things like they weren't onboarding an application, they were onboarding a team. So they were taking a group of people. Obviously, they had to have an application they wanted to move. But the idea was, we're going to teach you where all the tools are. We're going to teach you where all the rules are. We're going to teach you what all those different things. And basically, they essentially held a workshop that made everybody kind of in person or in a large virtual room learn the process. And so it was an educational thing. I mean, that can be a great way to scale because, again, once you do that, you don't have to do it for every new person that joins. You've dropped a little culture bomb into a team where you've injected, if you've got good trainers and things like that, you've injected what you want to have happen, how you want them to think about into that team. And then they'll read the docs and you'll be in a dialogue with them ongoing. So that's a better approach than come here, kiss the ring, go through our committees, let us criticize your stuff. And then maybe if we feel good about it, we'll approve it.
Yeah. And there's a balance there. There's a balance because I think there's somewhat of a place for that too, not to be countering every one of your points here, but I think there's a little bit of an appetite for putting some, again, good friction or good toll gates in getting to production. Say hypothetically, you've got an API that's going to production that's never been in production or has never been exposed to public before, and you're now going through the gateway. Now, I brought this up in my recent API Summit presentation, but the point was, is that endpoint supposed to be public? And so where I found value too is putting some production readiness, or is this API supposed to be public or not? Having some reviews of your posture of, hey, come talk to us, give us 15 minutes, let us review your spec, let us review your implementation so that you don't do something that you've never done before and make a big glaring error. Specifically is, tell me about the API itself and the consumers of this. Are they public? Are they not? Is this private? Those are pretty significant decisions that are made that if you sometimes make a simple error, you can have a public API that shouldn't be public. So having some of that checks and having them at least present to your team, if here's what I'm doing, never done this before, need your expertise. There is room for that too. Again, not the SDLC, not in the, you're building out features for them, but at least, am I ready to use your platform? This is new. Do you see any glaring holes in my implementation? There is room for that so that they don't do something silly.
Let's play with that for a minute, all right? So are you saying that would be a required step, or are you saying you offer that consultation as part of the process?
I think in some cases it's required if they've never used the platform before. It's the first thing that they're using the platform. There's risks to using it. If you don't do it right, you're going to have a security incident on your hands. If the team has not used it before, they don't know that there could be some little gotchas. They might not know that there's having this specific consumer marked on your APIs, putting it in the public domain. I've seen it happen where a team had no idea that putting this specific app was to make it public, and now any token can use it. And I didn't mean that. There are big, big risks of, I had no idea. If the docs aren't specific enough, somebody can check a box, have something public that shouldn't be, and now you've got a security incident.
You're making the point that I'm thinking in my head, right? Let me see if you agree with, I'm going to say this very declaratively, but you kind of, what do you think? It is, I would say, a manual review process is a failure of automation and a failure of education that may be necessary in cases, but it should be viewed as a stopgap until something that's more systematic could be applied.
And that's where we were going in the next version of the platform is, hey, look, you're doing all these manual things right now. We've got some incidents that could have been solved. When you're redesigning your platform for the next version, take all the painful stuff that you're doing today, design at least your roadmap to automate everything. So we had automated checks for what auth you're using. We had automated checks for, hey, is this a public API? Hold on, halt, warning, you're going public for the first time ever. You've at least got to do another review with us, or you've got to do something. You've got to check that you're aware, or we are going to reach out to the main asset manager, your service catalog. Do you have your compliance in check to make sure that it's noted that you're supposed to be a public API? If you're not, halt, stop. Go against what you have put in the docs, in the service catalog, in your platforms. All right, so sum it up. Manual reviews bad, automation good.
Yeah, exactly. But sometimes necessary, right? You have a waterfall of things. If you can automate it, great. If you can't, at least make it efficient, all those different things. But again, coming back to enablement versus coddling or hand-holding, right? Like it's a tough balance to strike. If it's a mature platform, you should be doing less hand-holding, right? And again, look for opportunities that scale. And it also depends on how big is the organization you're supporting, right? If you think back to our days at Passport, we didn't call it this, but we essentially had a 3-person platform team for 40, 50 engineers. In that stage, you could do some manual stuff. There was a little bit of a manual review, a little bit of a check before things went to production. Like they didn't need to scale it up to 500 engineers. So your processes don't have to worry about it. But like with some of our customers who are dealing with 5, 6, 7,000 engineers, if you run an enterprise platform, theoretically, every single one of those engineers might use your platform. You can't touch every one of them. You can't handhold every one of them. Big companies like that have a lot of turnover. There's a lot of consultants and contractors that are coming in and out. So you need mechanisms. You need controls that are automated. Again, if you fall back on a review process, like I've seen this with one of our customers with their cloud onboarding right now, every code change goes through a review process by the centralized team. And it's like, any wonder their velocity is what it is, right? They're really struggling. Yeah, it's like, no, you need controls, man. Like a review is not a control. I mean, a review is a stopgap. And so in today's world, if you can't script it, it's not real in a lot of ways, right? Obviously, we're biased. We provide a platform that helps people do that, right? So you can use our journeys and use some of the tools to really measure things and make sure they're what you want them to be. And so we spend a lot of time focusing and working with teams on, okay, let's build out your governance layer. What are the things that you need to make sure as a platform you're coming up on a readiness to adopt? Okay, great. What are the things that need to be done? Oh, we want everybody to have done this training, or we want everybody to have written this file or this documentation or whatever. Great. Let's programmatically assess that, and then off we go. And so,
well, that's why we built journeys, right? That's what we wish we would have had. We wish we would have had the journeys when we were doing these things. If I had a system that could tell me where everybody is by putting some measures out there, I would have been so much more effective at knowing without having to have a person go and interview every team, check the box, go search for this information, go search for that information. And it was literally a 40-hour-a-week job to do just that, is to interview everybody, is to check it in. Where are we? Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready yet? Where's the status of this? That's why we had it. I'm so glad we do, because it would have been a huge saver to me at a lot of places.
Yeah, no, 100%. 100%. So we obviously have our bias towards programmatic observation. And it's not to say that there isn't a place for human conversation and reviews and things like that, but those should be education. I think that's the point I'm trying to make. If you have them as a gate, that pains my soul. If you have those sessions, to your point before, the example you were giving around, hey, it's the first time you guys are going to production, so we're just going to check your stuff and we're going to do a review with you, but it's going to be like a code review. We're basically going to walk through your stuff and be like, all right, what about this? What about this? What about this? Like, that's more of an educational process, even though there's a control aspect to it as well, a quality aspect to it. But it's more of a, okay, this is your first time doing this. We've seen 500 of these. We're going to try and impart some of our knowledge to you, and also at the same time, make sure you haven't done something egregious. There's multiple benefits to that I think you can do indefinitely, especially if you pick your spots. One of the other things to think about when you have a platform and you're running a platform engineering team, you're doing horizontal tech, there's 2 kind of key personalities to look for, I would say, right? Like one for hiring on your team and then another to partner with. You want engineers that are opinionated, but great communicators on your team.
Yes, it's hard.
So people that
it's hard.
Care. Yeah, that care about the stuff. They love it. They think it's awesome. And they want to go help other people use it better, like kind of like almost like a developer relations type of thing. They don't necessarily have to be great writers, but they need to be good communicators. They need to be people you can go send into a meeting with another team who doesn't know what the hell they're doing. These guys or gals are going to make them better, right? Like they're not going to judge them. They're not going to say you're stupid, any of that stuff.
If you got a developer who just likes to I just want to put my head down, get a bunch of work done, just crank through my backlog, and that's all I ever want to do, is probably not a good fit for a long-term person on a platform team. I say long-term because sometimes you need that person to just squeeze through some extra reps, but 9 times out of 10, that person is not going to be terribly successful on a platform team because, as you said, communication is key. You've got to have somebody who can evangelize, who can talk the talk, who can educate their fellow developers on the best way to use a platform such as theirs. And it's hard. It's a hard balance. You got somebody who's going to get ticked off every time they get asked a question. Not the right place. Very much not the right place for a person like that.
Totally agree. I mean, I was talking more like you need a cohort of those people, but I agree with you from a cultural standpoint. You have to put the culture in of people that want to be helpful. They want people to use their stuff. You don't want overly helpful folks. There's even the remote kind of question, and all of a sudden their day is gone because they're going to help you think through everything that's ever happened. So you need to have the appropriate boundaries and guardrails and stuff there. But the other personality to look for is in your customer teams, understand who the trainer of trainers can be. Understand the person or persons that maybe it's a principal engineer or an architect or someone who's the type of person you might want to have on your team. They're, again, great communicator, they care. Who's the person that you can say, okay, I'm going to spend extra time making sure this person knows what's going on. They have all the expertise, this engineer or team leader or whoever the right personality, sometimes maybe it's an analyst or a PO or something like that, depending on your platform. I'm going to pour into that person because I know if that person understands how things are working the way that we want the platform to function, they'll make sure everybody else is in line. I don't have to go and like hammer 100 people. If I can get the one guy, the ambassador of that organization on board, they'll wrangle the rest of that organization. That's another kind of hack to think about as you're going through your constituencies or the teams that you're supporting is like, who are the key opinion makers that can help influence things and help keep the organization in line? Keep an eye out for those people and then really spend extra time with them to make sure they have as much context as you can give them, and that can go a long way. So, staffing matters, personalities matter.
It's somebody who's going to see the vision that you're laying out, somebody who can be that evangelist and be your advocate and can sell it internally because you don't know all the challenges that those teams are facing. They might have a backlog of 20 things that are seemingly just as important as what you're asking them to do, but they don't know how to implement that properly in their system. And you'll never know that. You'll never know in the years that they've been there. They know where everything is, where the problems are, why they can or can't do it now. But we work with that evangelist. They will know. They'll know where the bodies are buried. They'll know where the problems are, and they'll know how to get around them. So they'll be your advocate because they can see the vision, see the problems, and translate those to their team. Oh, okay, it's not so bad anymore because it's easy now. But if you were to go to them, it's a hill that'll never climb.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like sales, right? Like they're your champion. And people do this. They call this program security champions or API champions or whatever, right? Like sometimes you formalize this process. So you say, okay, here's the people we're going to give special access to. Like I remember I've seen this in some place. If you're a security champion, you could approve like a deferment on a vulnerability or something like that, right? So you had to do a little bit extra training, a little bit extra justification that you weren't just a dev that was just skipping, I don't want to do that vulnerability, so screw it. That you had to be somebody that like kind of validated a little bit of level of responsibility. And then it's like, yeah, okay, if Jason's saying this isn't critical and we can defer it or it's not applicable, it's a duplicate or whatever, then we're going to treat that as real. But that type of thing can work too. If I'd come back to it again, like as you're building these platform teams, fundamentally understand you are a leverage point. And this is, again, this does not to denigrate or talk down to your work because your work is really, really valuable and often the most important work in the shop, but you're still there as an enabler of the business technology, right? The people that are actually shipping the apps are the ones that have dollar signs attached to their work. You have to keep that mentality of I'm here to serve them so they can serve the business. And that's the value chain. That doesn't mean that you have to be mistreated or anything like that, but make sure you maintain that understanding of how the value flows through the organization. And then, yeah, be practical. Keep an eye on what scales, but then sometimes you get to do shit that doesn't scale. And that's okay. The famous phrase, I think it was Y Combinator or somebody, do things that don't scale, right? Say, okay, great. But that's not their advice once you're a $100 million company or even a $20 million company, right? Like that's their advice to Airbnb when they were taking pictures of people's houses for them to post on their website. Like that's the type of thing to get the momentum you need. You do things that don't scale. Once you have momentum, you have to scale. You have to put processes and systems and education and all those things in place.
Right. And also you got to say no. Sometimes you have to say no to something. I was working with a platform team, not one that I own, but it was another platform team. And one of my teams needed something done. They needed a component and they asked like, hey, platform team, this seems like something right up your alley. Can you build this for us? They said, no, like the way this is spec'd out, it's not going to scale. Nobody else is going to use it. And so you're on your own. Good luck. Well, here's the docs, here's how to do this, but this doesn't meet our vision for our platform. So we will help you be successful building it yourselves. It was a little bit of a shock to the team. Like, what? I could build this? Like, I get it because it's very specialized. It's very specific to your use case. So why would they spend time building a component that nobody else is going to use? It's yours. They don't want to maintain it. They don't want to manage that. So it makes sense. That's a good answer. And so that's one thing that a platform team has to be successful because if they were to say yes to everything, they're going to say no to the things that are going to help them be a more scalable platform.
You bring up a great point, though, or you're triggering something for me, right? Like, I totally agree with that. You have to make choices. It's still your product, right? You have a customer, you care about the customer, but it's still your product. You have to maintain and curate it. But also, the thing you mentioned, right? A lot of these platforms, especially for internal technology, whether it's API, DevSecOps, cloud, those are the ones that are big for me. There's a lot of code that gets written and a lot of kind of third-party modules, right? Like we did this with the mobile platforms and the web platforms and things like that. There's a lot of modules that you're providing to the organization, like maybe a Terraform module or a plugin for a Kong or something along those lines. Well, one of the great things to allow yourself to scale too is create some contribution guidelines and allow people to add to it, right? To your point, you don't have to accept everything, right?
Yes, you shouldn't accept everything.
The inner source model. Make sure your code is visible unless there's a reason not to. And if people have an ask that you can't prioritize, but you're okay with, let them do it themselves, right? Like we used to do that stuff all the time. We'd be like, hey, we can't get to this, but if you throw a PR in it, we'll review it. I mean, and that's a great way to scale too. So always be looking for scaling points, be practical. I don't know. What else would you say to a platform team that's trying to get off the ground?
I would say be careful of just allowing it to be a Wild West, and be careful with somebody sidestepping some of the controls you have and building something that you would never approve if you could help it. With great power comes great responsibility, but a responsibility not only with providing your platform, but preventing a misstep in somebody building something on top of that could be either a security challenge. Now, they put a plugin in your platform, and it's across the board for a bunch of apps. That's a global change that affects things that they have no idea about. You could have something that's in your API platform that's siphoning tokens and dropping it into a backend database. It's possible to do. If you have a mobile platform team, they could put something in as a component that is, going to have a race condition somewhere else because the data's not ready yet. It's so easy for a component or a plugin or something to go into a platform and affect the entire marketplace that you're serving so much easier than it is for a feature team. That's probably the biggest gotcha with running a platform is set your standards, capital S standards, set your guidelines, capital G guidelines, and make sure that nobody can sidestep those or build something that you would never approve of because you know the platform. They don't. They know their business case and you don't. But, it's your platform. You have to safeguard not just your platform, but everybody you serve.
Yeah. And if you give in, we've talked about this before, if you give in and something bad happens, no one will care that who was asking for the exception. It'll come back to you. I've run API platforms where came out later that some of the APIs that were built on them were wildly insecure. We had to adjust it. We had to explain that. It had nothing to do with us. It was actually down in the app code. And that was thankfully the case. But the platform, why did you allow this? Was the first question out of anybody's mouth. We had to defend ourselves. That's one of those other things to keep in mind. If you make exceptions, people very rarely will remember why the exception was made and who the senior person was that insisted on the exception. They'll only remember that you own this platform and this platform had this problem. You got to negotiate that, on a case by case basis, but you really got to bias yourself towards if things go bad, am I going to feel good about this decision? What am I really trading off? Making sure that you're not compromising yourself in a way that is a problem. Now, if it's just standards because it's best practice, because it's going to make things more efficient, like, okay, those are the areas you can compromise maybe.
Well, those are the lowercase standards, not the uppercase ones.
Yeah. If you get into something where like, oh, we're just going to use basic auth, or we're just going to use this, we're just going to change this, or we're just going to tap the line because we want to get some business events really quick, stuff like that. It's like, dig your heels in because if stuff goes bad, you'll be on the line for it.
Yeah. Because there's implications to everybody at that point.
Hopefully this was interesting to people. You're doing good work as the platform team, hopefully, and have compassion and love for your customers, man. The other thing I'd say, we didn't explicitly call it out, but the last thing I'll say is it's really easy because you tend to get really good people on platform teams. You tend to put some of your smarter folks there. It's really easy to get elitist, and it's really easy to look down on the app teams and think of them as dumb, and think of them as stupid and all those different things. You cannot allow that to happen in your team culture. Like your job is to support those people, to build them up, to make them better, to give them better tools and processes and pipelines and all those things. So the last thing I'd leave you with is make sure your team's focusing on making the app teams better and don't allow them to denigrate those teams, even in the face of epic stupidity, which happens. Like people do stuff, dumb stuff, but everybody's got their focus and their focus isn't the same as yours. And you got to keep that in mind. Take the ownership, extreme ownership. Take the ownership that your job is to educate them if they did the really stupid thing because you didn't educate them well enough. And if you take that on yourselves, you'll have a much better culture and your customers will appreciate you a lot more. So
exactly.
That's all we got.
Thanks.
Cheers, man.